You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined by Brad Hunt here. And today's podcast is with our friend Cody Jones at Wilde Arrow. Yep. The last podcast we did with Cody, we talked about fitting a bow properly and how that's a common error that new archers make. On this episode, we're like, okay, let's just assume the bow is set up properly. Let's talk now about tuning that bow. Yep. From arrow rest, from biscuits to drop-aways to cams, lean, cam, D-loop, where it's positioned, timing, all that kind of stuff. Yep, arrows. Then if everything's done right, then what's wrong with your arrows? So we high-level discuss all of these things. It's kind of useful for I'm surprised how many experienced archers don't know some of these things. Yeah. Yep. So it's primarily for you guys that don't have a lot of archery experience, but I think that there's a lot of information that's still unknown to even guys that have been shooting for a long time. Yeah. And so a lot of times you think there's something wrong with you, and really it's your bow, it's your setup.
Well, especially if somebody is trying to learn on their own how to tune a bow and to do it themselves to save some money.
Absolutely. It's a short episode, but packs a lot of good information in it. We just recorded it at Wilde Arrow Shop while Cody was working on other bows at the shop. Yep. Get into great discussion. So right now we have a big giveaway that we're doing. We're giving away a PSE bow and a dozen Black Eagle arrows. We're giving away a Leupold rangefinder. Yep. We've got Peaks equipment, gaiters, poles, and headlamps. We got initial ascent backpack. We're doing this giveaway right now, and to be entered to win, just use the code GRITTY over at Mountain Ops. But not only are you entered to win when you use the code GRITTY at Mountain Ops, you also get 30% off everything you buy, and you get free shipping. So it's a huge deal right now. Yep. And it's only between now and July 31st.
Time is running out.
So stock up. Mountain Ops doesn't just have supplement products, which I love, Ignite and Yeti and so forth, Blaze shots. They also have apparel, both like gym shorts, workout clothes, merino wool top, which I've been using for years now.
I love the tops. I mean, we've both been using for a long time, and I don't know, they have many different styles. They have lightweight to heavyweight, hooded,
different colors.
Unhooded. Yep.
So check them out. Use the code GRITTY over there. And then use the code GRITTY over at Peaks. If you don't have some trekking poles and you don't have the gaiters, you don't have a headlamp, get in there and use the code GRITTY. It helps us out. And everybody should have, I mean, if you don't have that kind of stuff already, go for it. Use the code GRITTY over there. It helps us out. And use the code GRITTY over at Stealthy Nutrition. Like I said on the podcast lately, the Sleep Support CBD gummies, one of my favorite products. I like the Roll-On CBD for soreness and pain relief. And Brad, krill oil,
these old men
E-Charge, the electrolytes. It doesn't have sugar. It's all super clean products.
Yes, exactly.
So use the code GRITTY over at Stealthy and save some money and get yourself some of this stuff that's they have the Immune Probiotic. That's another big hitter for me. It's all good over there. Rifle cover, glassing pad, can't forget those either. And then use the code GRITTY over at Initial Ascent backpacks. If you're in need of a expedition style backpack, Initial Ascent is my favorite, packing heavy loads. Dark Energy, all the links can be found down below in the description field for all the partners we work with. Check out Go Hunt if you haven't already. They have their new digital map system. They call it the Explorer membership. You sign up for the Explorer membership, you subscribe to that, and you will get their digital map system, all 50 states. Gives you some really cool features. The satellite imagery is probably the number one best.
And they're updating every day. Like the new thing right now that I think is just this week.
Yeah, it's a new product. So the stability of the app isn't as far along as some companies who have been doing this a long time, but every day it's getting more and more that way.
And you can download
the features that are unique to hunters.
A whole unit, you can download everything in that unit, just one click.
You can share routes and waypoints and stuff. You can share more easily between your buddies with Go Hunt than the other ones. You got the range finding tool.
Yeah.
Which I'll just touch on that real quick. I mean, basically, if you range your animal and it's 1,500 yards away, you can put out this range finding tool, which just extends and puts
you put in
sphere,
1,500 yards, and it'll give you a radius.
And that animal's on that radius, but then the GPS, the compass, will point you in right at the animal, and then you corroborate it with some stellar satellite imagery, and you could pretty much plot where that animal is standing as you begin your stalk.
And some people may not think that's a big deal, but if you're archery hunting and you have to go around and you're coming down at a totally different angle, things change.
Look, the satellite imagery saved our butts. We've been using Gaia a lot to help us figure out when we'll be cliffed out, because we couldn't get it through other map tools. But now with the satellite imagery on Go Hunt, we can get like real imagery, not just like a drawn image. It's just very cool. So check that one out. Use the code GRITTY at Go Hunt. Get yourself the Explorer maps, and it's cool. Check it out. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy today's podcast. Stay gritty. All right, folks, we are back at Wilde Arrow with Cody Jones.
Hello.
We're going to talk about D-loops, arrow rests, bow tuning, general, cams, and such. He's over here working in the shop on Blake Perkins' setup. Elder Perkins here is his bow in the shop, and Cody's trying to concentrate on the podcast, but he's kind of messing up Blake's bow. So, come on, man. We need you to
I literally put the cam on backwards twice.
I need to fix her.
Twice. I got it. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. All right, folks. So here we go. We're going to get into this right now. All right.
I think I got it on straight this time.
But Blake, you trust Cody?
I don't know. After seeing that cam be put on wrong twice.
Yeah.
The first time was okay.
Podcast.
The first time was okay, but the second time was kind of iffy. But I think he'll get it figured out eventually.
I was just trying to see if you'd catch it, if you'd catch it right. How's my mic working?
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, Cody. So let's talk about mistakes, common new mistakes that archers make, starting with the D-loop.
D-loop. So I see a lot of D-loops that come in. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
All right. I can't hear myself. D-loops. A lot of times with D-loops, so there's a bunch of different ways you can put D-loops on, right? Like you get on and you just search how to do D-loops, and there's 1,400 different ways to do them. But the biggest thing that I see with them is
1,400? Oh, I mean, that's a little hyperbolic, don't you think?
I think I've found 437 ways myself.
Okay.
Just being here late at night bored. So loose, they're sliding. So you can do your knots, a bunch of different ways. We prefer to do them, the top knot opposite of the bottom knot. But then when it comes to like knock sets and stuff like that, I've literally seen D-loops run that came in. It was a shoelace. It was a shoelace tied D-loop.
Oh, wow.
It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I really want one. I don't know how most of
Seems dangerous.
Oh, my gosh.
Seems like a good way to punch yourself in the face.
There was a lot of melting and just and D-loop. But
describe what a D-loop is. Let's look at one. So let's say a guy's pretty new.
I don't have one on Blake's bow yet. But so a D-loop's going to be the D-ring right here.
Blake, thank you.
Yeah.
Here,
beautiful.
I got to focus this.
Yep.
Camera. All right, so that's a D-loop right there.
Yep. So if you look at mine, I have a knot on this and a knot on that.
Mm-hmm.
The bulbed end or the burned end is on opposite sides, and then I have a knock set. Now, I've heard a bunch of different things on, this knock set needs to be, or this tie needs to be on that side, or this tie this way, or whatnot. I personally am not good enough to tell a difference, and so I don't get too crazy. As long as they're on opposite sides, it just helps it so that it's not always constantly twisting around one way.
Okay, so one knot goes against the other knot.
Yep. I do it that way.
So what's a common problem then that you see with a new archer?
They have a lot of times, like if they get a bow set up just like a quick little package kit bow and they don't know what's going on. The D-loop is so loose that it's sliding all over the place. Up, down. It's not locked in very tight. The knots are borderline going to explode. Which is a fear of mine, like knock on wood.
Yeah.
I'm very picky in how I get my knots to go on because I've very rarely ever had D-loops break. Like in the history of me doing this, I can't remember how many, maybe only a couple.
Okay.
So knots and not being tight enough to where they're sliding all over the place.
Right. Okay. So what about position? Up or down?
Yeah, I mean that's relative to the rest and the bow, and
so let's talk about the rest then.
Okay, so most.
What are
That's a
talk about
common rest, like
because a lot of times a guy will have a really messed up rest situation, really messed up D loop.
Yep.
Meaning you're doomed when you try to shoot an arrow because nothing's tuned.
Yeah, you can have so up and down position is going to be relative to what rest they're shooting and what bow they're shooting. But a lot of times, like if we see rest, for example, we see a lot of different variations of rest come in. Whisker biscuits to limb-driven rests, to cable-driven rests, to even the old two-prong bouncy rests. So location is going to be all relative to those, but a lot of times what we see is the loop is going to be not level at all, and so loose that it never would stay level.
Okay,
is probably like I said, the shade, the loose nature of it's probably going to be the biggest concern. That I see with those.
Okay.
Location, like I said, will just be when we get into the rest tuning part of things.
Yeah, tell me about that. So you got two rest designs that are the primary designs that you're dealing with.
Hand me that, Blake.
And they have different mechanisms, right?
Right.
For tuning.
So most of the rests are going to be either a drop away or some sort of fall away rest and a whisker biscuit.
Okay.
Type style hostages, which are the three little bristles that come on like diamond bows. Usually
you got a whisker biscuit around here?
I have a whisker biscuit right here. Check this bad right out. She is beautiful, just absolutely pristine. So this is a whisker biscuit with the full bristles,
full containment. The arrow just slips in there.
Yep. This is actually a great example. There's the brand new one. That is the newest one that they have. You have an actual V in there. Yep. Which I don't know. To be honest, I don't know how this was thought out. There you go. There's QAD. So form a drop away. Go ahead and flick that, sir.
Nice.
Boom.
Okay, so that's the QAD rest.
Most rests are coming that way now, where you have some sort of mechanism where you can lift the rest up. It'll lock in position to give you containment and then falls away when you shoot it.
Okay.
Biggest things we see with a lot of these is, and like I said, I don't know the thinking behind this guy really was, because that hole is so big. Depending on what arrow diameter you're using,
it's more like a rest.
There's a lot of movement in there.
Yeah.
And so with these ones they used to make, and what we try to do is they have medium, smalls, large. We'd want to make that diameter relative to the diameter of what arrow they're shooting. Like this one would be fine. Yeah. But I tuned a bow earlier today where the biscuit hole was the large,
way
and they're
too
shooting
sloppy.
a small arrow.
Okay.
Yeah. So, which could have some tuning issues and some bouncing around and that sort of thing.
Right.
And then when it comes to drop away rests like QADs or any of the other,
show me yours.
Drop away.
You got a Hamsky?
Yeah. So drop away rests come in a couple forms: the limb driven stuff, or they come in the cable driven stuff. And you can get into a whole bunch of rabbit holes on what's better or what's the advantages to one over the other. But on this one, I have a Hamsky. So this cord is going to run to my limb. As the limb flexes, it's going to slack the cord. When the cord slacks, it's essentially going to raise my rest up to full drop position. And then when I fire, the limb retracts and pulls it down out of the way. Is how that particular rest is going to work. When I see a lot of rests come in, especially the cable-driven rests, they have
QAD?
QADs, rip cords, trophy taker, any of them in general. The way that they have them tied into the cable in that location isn't conducive to them falling properly with the right amount of timing.
Okay.
So, grab that one, Blake. They, for example, this one over here, this one. So how these are tied, it depends on the bow manufacturer. So this one, they serve that cable all the way down. So we start it at the best place we can, which is going to be right here.
Okay.
Which is okay. It's a little longer than I would tend to like to have it. Usually,
a lot of extra string.
There's a lot, exactly. So I've seen them where they're straight and they're like straight in line with the rest, but then that's not going to give you the motion, because a lot of the cords, like on this, they need that downward pressure to function them properly. And so if they're straight, that could be bad. If they're too far, that could be bad. Somewhere around, if you go off the launcher straight across and down, that measurement 3 inches or so. So I see a lot of these that are tied in properly where they're not activating the rest. They're getting contact because this isn't falling out of the way like it's supposed to.
Right.
I see these big giant globs of serving and big football things and stuff that just is super big, a lot of weight on the cable, a lot of clutter going on.
Okay.
So I see that. That's a real common thing that we see as well. So
let's say they have the biscuit on, and they have or they have one of the dropaways like a QAD or the ham ski.
Yeah.
Okay, they got that set up. Is there anything with alignment that can be wrong with where it's bolted on, or do they all bolt on the same way? Like, what's the situation there?
So, I mean, we've seen numerous amounts of different setups and ways and how they've been slapped on. I've seen biscuits come in on bows. We're starting a ham ski for Blake, but I've seen whisker biscuits come on bows that were bolted backwards. They were actually bolted backwards, and the biscuit was in the front.
Wow. Okay.
Multiple times. You'd be surprised how many times
bad.
I've seen that come in. They're like, yeah, I got this bow set up, and their biscuit's in the front. And I'm like, I'm trying to see the reasons why you'd want to do that. But,
yeah.
I mean, maybe it's something that I need to play with. I might learn something. But I see that a lot. And then where a lot of rests nowadays have systems where they'll bolt against a riser and they'll kind of lock in place, but sometimes they'll be too high, they'll be too low, not tight enough, shoved in so far that the launcher itself is contacting the riser.
Yeah.
So that they're getting slap every single time.
Okay.
You would think pretty basic stuff. I've seen a lot of different things. So.
Okay. So we'll talk about, like, on another episode, arrow rests in more detail, because I want to get your opinion on why you use what you use, what your favorite. And you guys deal with a lot of them at the bow shop here.
Yeah.
So my real question is, which ones are the most fail-proof? Because as a hunter,
right.
I just want it to work every time,
right.
over and over. I want it to set up easily, and I want it to be reliable.
Right.
I mean, I just want it to perform and be reliable.
Yep.
Those are the two big things. So I think, let's get into that.
Simplicity, reliability.
A lot of people would say a whisker is that.
And it is, honestly, like, you could, as a bow hunter, you could be fairly effective with a whisker biscuit. You honestly could. It would shoot. You could tune a whisker biscuit to where your group size and your accuracy is good enough to harvest stuff. It really is. So honestly.
But there are cons to it.
Yeah. There's some cons, and we're chasing perfection, right? We're always chasing that envelope of, I want to be the most accurate shooter and the most repeatable, and I want to be the best and just hit everything that I'm shooting at and shoot that tick off the deer's butt. I want to be able to be that accurate. Don't shoot at butts. That's a bad thing.
Just the ticks.
Disclaimer.
Just the ticks on the butts.
Yeah, the ticks, right? I don't want to shoot a tick. I want to hit that tick in the rib cage, right where I'm aiming. The whisker biscuit, it works. It honestly does. But the pros and cons thing, like, I can get a drop away that gives me all the containment that I would ever want for drawing, letting down, moving. I don't stock with my arrow loaded if I don't have to. I try to avoid that just because, But
even when I do, I haven't found things like the ham ski or the QAD to be a problem.
Right.
It's enough containment that I can do my stock just fine.
I
want speed.
Yeah, speed. I mean, 4 feet is the most I've really seen on whisker biscuits.
That's a lot.
Lately. I mean,
that's
4 feet.
It's up there.
4 feet's there.
Especially when you got a 28-inch draw.
Yeah, and depending on what arrow vein setup you're running, more drag. It's the contact thing that's the issue.
And I got to wonder how that's going to shoot on an extreme helical
over
shaft.
time, right out of the box, it'll work fine. We can get most bows to tune with them, but depending on your bow, depending on your nock travel, a lot of times, hold that, sir. A lot of times on these new bows, depending on nock travel, it's so aggressive that you're going to get the thicker bristle, and a lot of people don't know this, so this is kind of a tidbit for people that still don't know.
Yeah.
That is thicker. So the black bristle is thicker than the brown. The whole concept of that is when you fire a bow, you're going to get some up and downward pressure.
Right.
That's designed to keep it from collapsing and completely blowing through the bottom.
Yep.
So a lot of times people will shoot their odd vein down and it blows through the black and they get a bunch of contact.
So, Mr. Perkins here, you're going for a ham ski rest. What's your logic behind that? Why'd you choose that route?
I think it's more durable than the QAD, in my opinion. It has a secondary connect system right here, so it's really hard to bend this, and there won't be any way that it could bend. Another thing is it's limb driven, so with it being limb driven, the cables move a lot faster than these limbs. And so with it being limb driven, it's going to support the arrow longer, which in turn makes it more accurate. And if there's a problem in the woods, like let's say it gets really cold and then it gets really hot. The QAD, the core tension is very specific. It might stretch, and if it stretches, then the timing's off and your rest won't fall. With this, if your rest isn't tight right here, you'll be able to see right here, and I can make an adjustment on the field. I don't have to come down to Wilde Arrow and have Cody fix the timing on this. I could just make it out there, and then I can keep hunting. That's my logic of why I switched to a Hamsky. I was running QAD. Never had any problem with the QAD. I just don't want to run it long enough until I have a problem.
Yeah, it's pros and cons, right? So containment wise, QAD, it's hard to beat. It's got that small containment zone. It keeps your arrow nice and tight. It works great. Same thing. I've never had one fail me ever. But with a Hamsky, he's right. So what Blake pointed out on this bow, look at it again, like the bridging here, right? I fell on my bow. I actually got ran off the trail by a mountain biker. Real jerk. And I fell on my bow and I
don't
slammed
hike
it.
where a mountain biker could roam.
There was 4 people behind me.
I have,
and they got to me, and not a single one of my friends was like, "Hey, biker."
This is a Utah Wasatch thing.
Yeah, it was on the extended, and I'm sitting there, and there's 4 people behind me, and I'm just beep, 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 and all of a sudden
this is a Colorado, Utah phenomena.
I hear biker at the last second, like biker, and I hear the brakes, and I hear the dirt behind me, and I'm like, oh crap. So I go to jump off the trail. I got my stiff Crispies on, right? So I couldn't feel all these boulders. Whack a boulder, go to fall, and I slam this straight into the boulders. There's a big old chunk missing out of mine that's like big groove out of it. Rest was fine.
Yeah.
If that would have been my QAD, there was no protection, I probably would have broke my plastic launcher off and been hosed.
So let's assume that a guy gets the D loop right.
Yep.
Okay. Gets the arrow rest right. It's all set up, but he's still not shooting clean shots and it's not his form. It's a tuning issue. What would be the next thing you jump to?
So just kind of a quick rundown. When we're building bows, we know Blake's draw length, so we got that set. Then we're gonna do his poundage. We got that set.
Draw length,
we're
poundage,
gonna do and then we're gonna
sight,
do
all that.
Yeah.
D loop's good. Arrow rest.
Yep.
Then
cam synchronization. And when where the cams are rotating, whether it's a single cam, binary cam, cam and a half, 2 cam.
What does all that mean? The cam, tuning, and
so what we're gonna do with that is, and hopefully we do all that before we do all the other D loop stuff. Like if it's done correctly, we would do all that before we go down peep sights, and I don't even set that till all that's done. But it's basically making sure that each bow, no matter what the brand is, has a designed arrow delivery that they're looking for. Certain cams do it better than others. But at the end of the day, you want that arrow delivering a good, clean arrow out of the bow for that, stereotypical bullet hole that everyone's looking for.
Okay.
So cam sync can drastically change how the arrow's being delivered. I can put a D-loop on here. I can level square it. I can have the rest tuned. I can have a chord set perfectly. All that can be great. But then when I fire it, if one of these is acting different than the other one, or one's pulling more to one side or hitting faster or slower than another one, that's going to change how that string is oscillating. So
is that a common thing you see then?
Yeah. So with that, on that topic, with cam sync and stuff, depending on the make and model, we see a lot of budget bows, if you will, come in that are like box store type bows that are more basic in their cam system. And a lot of those bows will have pegs that can move independently from the module. So on this one, for example, on this HBX Pro, you have a module that affects his draw length and his let off. But this peg right here is what's going to ultimately roll all the way around and contact his cable, and that's going to be his full draw position.
Okay.
I see a lot of bows come in from other manufacturers that when that is independent from the module, they have set the draw length in one position and the module in another. And so they're effectively messing, and they're different. It's not matching. The draw length doesn't match where the peg is. So it's affecting let off. It's affecting cam rotation. It's affecting arrow delivery.
That's a whole ball of wax that you got to sort out.
Like older Bowtechs or some of the primes, some of the diamonds, you see that peg in a completely wrong position. It's affecting a lot. I see that a ton. They've just moved a peg to lengthen the draw length without moving the module for whatever reason.
Right. So let's say they get that the cams all dialed.
Yep.
Okay, everything's smooth there. They got the arrow rest, D-loop. It's fitted properly.
Right.
Going down the list of things. We talked. Probably the next issue is arrow tuning and arrows, matching the right arrow to the bow.
That's a rabbit hole.
Which is a whole system, but give me a very high level issue that you see with new archers when they show up at the shop and they've got they're doomed because their arrow is either way too stiff, way too weak. Talk about that just briefly.
A lot of times it's too weak. If we had to pick our direction, it'd be too weak. That's the one we get concerned about the most.
Okay. What does that mean? Too weak. What's too weak?
Too weak, you're going to have a lot of oscillation. We're not using your football, by the way. You're going to have a lot of oscillation in the arrow shaft, and so every time you fire it, you're going to get so much movement in it.
But talk about, let's just go back to, what do you mean when you say arrow's weak?
Weak meaning, so there's a chart, right, that you can look up. Some manufacturers have it online. Some manufacturers put it on their arrow boxes. So based off of your poundage and your draw length and where the arrow's cut length is, that's going to be what's going to determine what spine stiffness you need to shoot out of your bow.
So you need an arrow there's some that are like a noodle and some that are really stiff, like a rod.
Yeah, it's all going to be dependent on. So, like for example, let's say
what's the problem with an arrow that's like a noodle versus one that's too stiff? You have two extreme errors, right, with the bow set up.
To a point, yeah. I've never found a problem with being too stiff.
Really?
Yeah. Personally, I've shot arrows that are extremely stiff, like 2 boxes farther on a chart than what it says I'm supposed to shoot. I've never had the issue. Backwards of that, going too weak, it's sometimes not as big of a deal with field tips and target archers. They can kind of play around with that a little bit more and get some forgiveness sometimes. But with broadhead flight, broadheads are already so picky that if your arrow's moving a lot, it's going to just magnify that with a broadhead. So we try to get an optimal spine, or that's where the stiffness comes in.
They call the stiffness the spine.
Yeah, so like for example, that's a 300 spine. That doesn't mean 300 grains. That if we're talking arrows and mistakes that new archers make, they think that is 300 grains.
Right.
That's actually 300 spine. And they measure that by bridging the arrow, hanging a weight from it, how much it flexes.
Stiffer is heavier.
In some cases, generally, yeah, very, very general. Usually the stiffer the arrow you go in a specific series, it's going to get heavier.
So a lot of, I think, archers, especially new archers, are chasing speed.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So they tend to lean on getting, I think, a lightweight arrow, which means they come in with that low spine, really flimsy arrow shaft. Right?
Yeah. So you can yes and no. You have arrow manufacturers that will build for example, that's a 300 spine. Just grab the whole thing. 300 spine. There are 300 spine arrows out there that weigh 10.1, 10.4 grains per cent.
Right.
And then there's
that's kind of like the X Impact VAP.
Yeah. Yep.
The reason those micro shaft arrows, they want them stiff but light.
Yep. Depending on how you're going to build it, if you're going like FOC or what your overall goal is, you can build a really heavy specific spined arrow, and then you can build a really light specific spined arrow.
That's a rabbit hole.
That's a ginormous rabbit hole. But in general, for general terms, if you take the same arrow manufacturer, you take this same arrow, for example, and I go from a 300 to a 340 to a 400, the grains per inch will change depending on that. And when you get too light of an arrow shaft, wind could be a factor, momentum could be a factor, rabbit holes on arrow shafts for sure.
So how do you recommend a guy select his arrows?
Start out with, spine first. Usually we tune the bows. We know what poundage is, what his cut length is. We have a general idea of what spine's going to work. And sometimes certain bows, honestly,
shoot better.
Shoot differently. Yeah, they prefer a little bit more on the borderline weak side or optimal, and then some bows want a stiffer spine. So we start out with what we feel is going to work based off the normal chart system, if you will. And then from there, we shoot the bow and see what it's performing with. In most cases, if we lean stiffer, we don't have any issues. if we're running into that or not. But then there are some bows, like Jeremiah's bow, for example. One of his bows really preferred not a weak shaft, but it preferred a shaft that was on the weaker side of things.
Okay.
For some weird reason. So just to start out with, I tell people, and I have customers coming all the time, that if you try to go down rabbit holes of FOC and this arrow and outserts and all this stuff like we got into with Blake, you can get overwhelmed really quickly. So get a good durable arrow. I tend to nowadays lean away from some of the hybrid arrows that have aluminum mixture into them. I try to go full carbon. Get something that's spine correctly for, again, poundage and draw length. And then after that, I mean, you can go straightness tolerances. New shooters usually will get them into something that's like a 006 straightness, more of a basic carbon just to get them shooting, and then they can go.
And what do you do as a bow shop to sort of confirm that the arrow is appropriately matched to the bow?
We'll come check it through paper.
What does that look like?
Like a bolt hole.
Well, grab your bow and just shoot it real quick. I'm curious. Yeah.
I'm not very good, Brian. What if my bow shoots bad?
Well, looking at Blake do it.
Blake, can you shoot my bow? It's 80 pounds. It's only 75. So grab this guy. Take this guy, because this is what I'm shooting. We'll see if you tune the same as mine. I'll show you the tear I shot earlier. Do you need a trigger puncher? You got one? All right. Blake's shooting the best trigger puncher you can get. Probably, the stands. See this tear right here, Blake? That one right there? That's what you're getting? That's the little bull hole I shot earlier with that bow. What's your draw length? Baby, I'm not you. I'm 28 inches, and it's only 75 pounds.
So let me get behind this. Whoa, his arm is bent.
No, he looks good. He looks great. Don't even worry about it.
Okay.
See, I'd say that's optimal draw length.
Ooh.
Is it? It's pretty close. Not bad. See, that's what
Do
we're
it one more time.
Yeah, let's see a repeat. Yeah, repeat.
So where's your hole?
It's that one.
That one. That is pretty clean. That looks clean.
Yeah, I just slapped that bad ride together this morning.
So what we're looking at here is how the arrow punches through the paper, right? And if it goes through the paper and looks clean, then we know
we got a good starting point.
not as good.
What'd you do?
Probably added a little heel pressure. I mean, your draw length's so short.
Yeah.
Hey, baby, she's 28 inches full bore.
So explain that. Like, his first shot was money.
Yep.
Super clean.
Yep.
Second shot had a little bit of a problem.
Yep.
What?
These are the minute things that we talked about, like his hand position. Maybe his hand position's off on.
It's not his bow.
Correct. Right. But whether it's your bow or not, the deviations that we're seeing could be grip pressure, could be face pressure, could be hand positioning. It could be whether he's pulling harder or softer on the shot. Those could be some things. But what you're doing,
Ooh, that's money.
that's beautiful. See, now he's got it figured out.
So basically, that shot right there is so clean. You can see that it. Yep. Just the little hole, and then you have the little paper where the fletchings were, and there's no tearing at all of the paper, meaning the arrow passed through the paper with, like, exactly straight.
Yeah, so that's a starting point, right? So what we do when we're building the arrows back to that thing, we're gonna take what we feel is the correct spine, shoot it through the bow, see how it's performing. Some bows, they have tolerances, right? You have the limbs are a tolerance to the axle to the cam to the bearings, the limbs to the pockets. There's so many variables that you run into that sometimes we're not exactly on the spine that we thought it should. Well, maybe
Right.
once stiffer or weaker, but we'll shoot it through here to make sure that if the bow's leveled, we went through the D-loop stuff, we went through the rest stuff, we got everything kind of in a neutral position, kind of a starting point. We'll shoot it through here and we'll see how it's performing. If we get a good bowl hole like that, then we know our spine is relatively on par. But that, depending on how far you want to get down that rabbit hole, I've shot bullet holes like what Blake just shot with that awesome tear, and my groups were still not quite as good as maybe an arrow that had a little bit of a tear.
Okay.
So there's There's a lot that goes into it, but general rule of thumb, we'll shoot it through paper, make sure we're getting a good tear, make sure we're not getting weak or stiff or fighting anything there, and it's consistently repeating, and that's where we start.
Okay. All right, dude. Well, that's awesome. I think that's new beginner stuff.
So proud of you. You broke your release.
All right. So the next podcast, we're going to discuss, what were we going to cover? We were going to cover...
good job.
Oh, your favorite arrow rest and why, right?
Yep.
Right?
I guess so.
That's it. I'm the one in charge, and that's what we're going to discuss next.
I'm the worst one to do. Ask Jeremiah. Like, I am Tinkerbell. I like them all. Yeah, get him over there. You know, hiding there. Yeah.
Well, good.
I play with...
A lot of money for that, but at least we have really good feedback on what works good and what doesn't.
I'll tell you how each one of them hold up in the trees, in the sap. You know, I've tried sapping them. I just throw dirt for no reason.
Yeah.
I'll put them in a cow pond.
Okay.
You never know.
Okay.
Just for fun.
Yeah, I want to figure that one out. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast. Appreciate you. Stay gritty. Till next time.
Bye-bye.